The ancients believed that everything existing in the world carried within itself a distinct soul. Those who could name and awaken these souls were known as summoners. Since ancient times, legends about them have become an immortal part of history. Some summoned clay to build mighty warriors, others brought the dead back to life. Some ventured deep into forests to call upon mystical spirits, and some even summoned the light of stars from the sky. However, no matter how glorious the legends were, they remained just legends. Destiny had sealed them all in the flow of time, gradually fading into the oblivion of this world. This is Ajay, a 16-year-old teenager in 11th grade. At an age when most of his peers are caught up in studies or experiencing their first emotional stirrings, Ajay remains completely indifferent. He doesn't care about grades, nor does he concern himself with feelings. His personality is somewhat strange. He often creates an invisible distance between himself and society, living separately like an outsider. However, Ajay is well liked by children. He has some special attraction that makes children enjoy gathering around him. If there's anything most notable about Ajay, it's his self-reliance. From a young age, he knew how to take care of himself, especially in cooking. For Ajay, cooking isn't just a life skill, but has become almost an art form. Ingredients are always carefully selected, and each step is meticulously executed. Notably, he's even mastered rare techniques like the noodle dance performed by chefs at Hadilao. One could say Ajay's culinary skills are impressive enough to amaze anyone. However, on what seemed like the most ordinary day, his mundane life took an unexpected turn. While preparing to enjoy a hot bowl of noodles he had just made, Ajay suddenly felt the space around him freeze. Right before his eyes, a strange circle glowed brightly with sparkling electrical flashes, and from within it, a girl appeared. With shimmering pink hair and eyes red as fire, the girl looked both magical and frightening. Startled, Ajay dropped his bowl of noodles. But before it could hit the ground, the girl suddenly shrank in size, rushed to catch the bowl, and casually ate everything. She remarked that it had been 100 years since she'd tasted noodles so delicious. Ajay was bewildered and immediately questioned the identity of this strange visitor. The girl proudly introduced herself as Dora and seemed about to tell more about her lineage. But before she could finish her sentence, Ajay unceremoniously kicked her out of the house. He convinced himself that he must be sleep-deprived and hallucinating. However, when he returned to the kitchen, the sight that greeted him made him want to scream. The pink-haired girl had eaten almost all of his broth. Once again, Ajay lost his composure and threw her out. Yet, things didn't end there. Dora suddenly phased right through the wall to return. This time, she boldly declared that she was not a ghost, but a summoned soul. Having said that, without waiting for permission, she innocently ate all the fruit in the house. Ajay was nearly driven mad, even going so far as to throw her down the toilet, using every means to drive her away. But all was in vain. Finally, in desperation, he sat down to listen to Dora's story. As it turned out, she had existed for over 3 million years. The beautiful form she initially appeared in was just an energy-consuming state. Now, to conserve energy, she had to maintain a small, cute appearance. More importantly, it was Ajay who had accidentally summoned her while he was sound asleep. And now, Dora demanded that he take responsibility. But instead of caring, Ajay just ignored her and continued going to school as if nothing had happened. On his way to school, he was still confused, with his stomach growling because he hadn't eaten properly. Ajay silently hoped that when he returned, the strange girl would be gone. But things weren't that simple. From behind, Dora's clear voice rang out, along with the image of her hanging from a traffic light to call his name. Though Ajay used all his strength to run away, Dora still gently flew over and landed right on his head. When he entered the classroom, the situation wasn't any better. Dora not only followed him to the window, but also boldly appeared right on his desk, presenting contract papers as if to force Ajay to sign. This harassment caused him to explode in frustration, earning him a scolding from the teacher. The peak came when Dora casually slept on the teacher's head while he was lecturing. Unable to bear it anymore, Ajay left, determined to escape her at all costs. However, even when he got home, he wasn't at peace. Ajay accidentally encountered another girl who wanted to confess her feelings to him. But before he could receive her letter, Dora's voice sounded from behind. In anger, Ajay threw his bag hard on the ground, making the girl misunderstand that he was angry with her. Frightened, she burst into tears and ran away, leaving Ajay sitting in a state of despair. He thought of another approach. If Dora was summoned by food, Perhaps offering a lot of food as an offering would make her disappear. But that plan quickly failed. Instead, when she heard him bluntly wanting to drive her away, Dora became sad to the point of tears. She confided that a summoned soul, if unable to sign a contract, would forever be abandoned, becoming a lonely wandering ghost for thousands of years until completely disappearing. This sentiment made Ajay momentarily waver. Dora asked for one last thing, to go for a walk with him, to create the most beautiful memories. On that path, Dora told Ajay sweet things about the world while revealing a truth. All humans carry within themselves the potential to summon, but very few actually awaken and master it. Those people are the summoners, individuals who can do things beyond the reach of ordinary humans, even capable of destroying or saving the entire world. Once more, Dora invited Ajay to become a summoner. Though still hesitant, this time he nodded in agreement. The contract was officially signed. Dora was overjoyed, hugging him from behind and taking Ajay high into the sky to feel what it's like to have wings. But the joy was short-lived because shortly after, Dora was exhausted and starving, forcing both to return home injured. To add to their misfortune, Ajay discovered that the house's electricity had been cut off because he forgot to pay the bill. While he was frustrated, Dora gently summoned glowing fireflies, transforming the entire room into a shimmering scene. Not only did they provide light, but their glow also had healing properties for wounds. Ajay looked at her with questioning eyes, wanting to know exactly where she came from. But Dora only hinted that if she were to tell, it would take 3 days and 3 nights to finish. Just then, a severe pain struck her. In Dora's mind, vague images of battles appeared, causing her to collapse. When she opened her eyes, she found herself bound by invisible chains, panicking to the point of fainting. Ajay was alarmed, not knowing what to do other than cover her with a blanket, and he quickly realized she had fallen into a peaceful sleep. He also lay down beside her and quickly drifted off to sleep. The next day, Ajay found a quiet corner outside the basketball court to sit pensively, pondering various life matters. Meanwhile, Dora wasn't particularly concerned. She imagined the place as a beach and casually lay down as if sunbathing, because in her eyes, her beauty was exclusively for Ajay to admire. Ajay, on the other hand, blushed to the point of resembling a ripe tomato. Just then, the school's notice board announced that yesterday, a human figure had been spotted flying in the sky, and the zoomed-in image showed it was none other than him. Hearing the news, Ajay was so shocked he couldn't even drink water normally. In contrast, Dora remained calm, assuring him there was nothing to worry about, and even casually asked him to apply sunscreen on her. While she was leisurely lying in the middle of the basketball court, a strange creature suddenly appeared from behind, approaching her. Just as she turned her head, Dora was half swallowed by it. She frantically called for help repeatedly, but Ajay was busy playing Free Fire and paid no attention. Furious, she took the sunscreen tube and threw it straight at his head. Only then did Ajay turn around in shock to see she had been completely swallowed, with only her bikini spat out by the monster. Angry, Ajay chased after it, while the monster ran and transformed into a wheel-like form to accelerate. Dora, inside its stomach, was continuously spun around to the point of dizziness. Ajay thought to himself, wasn't she supposed to be very powerful? Why couldn't she find a way to escape? The truth was, a summoned soul, when separated from its master, would lose almost all of its power. The monster charged straight into the club fair area, causing Ajay to accidentally encounter the brother of the girl whose feelings he had rejected yesterday. When he realized that both siblings were martial arts experts, he realized he had stumbled into big trouble. However, Dora's faint cries for help forced Ajay to abandon everything and rush off, leaving the two siblings fuming with anger. Dora's voice grew increasingly faint, making him fear she might be digested if he delayed. Suddenly, a strange voice rang out, accompanied by the appearance of a stranger. This person seemed to know the current situation well, even implying that Ajay possessed a hidden power. But in the end, he was simply a club member recruiting people. Just then, Ajay glimpsed a familiar creature that looked like a moving flower, immediately jumping over the man's head to chase after it. But when he caught it, he discovered it was just someone cosplaying as a flower. Helpless, he concentrated on listening to Dora's voice once more, only to learn that the monster had taken her to a lively concert. Communicating with her at that moment allowed her to regain some of her power, but it quickly weakened again. As Ajay was in despair, a thought crossed his mind. If the man eating flower had taken Dora away, hadn't he already escaped the trouble? Hearing these heartless words, Dora exploded in anger, rallying her spirit and unleashing all her fury on the monster's stomach wall, causing it to writhe violently. Thanks to this, Ajay was able to track her location. The closer he got, the stronger Dora's power became, and finally, she crawled out of the monster's mouth, completely naked, immediately defeating it, causing Ajay to fearfully step aside. The monster not only didn't die but dug into the ground to escape, finding a mysterious girl and stopping beside her as if to provoke them. Dora was furious and wanted to continue fighting, but the girl just coldly turned away, then suddenly teleported and disappeared, leaving both of them stunned. Dora could only swallow her resentment. Ajay gently patted her head to comfort her, saying that Person wasn't an easy opponent to mess with. She was puzzled as to how he could guess that Person was the true form of the monster. Ajay explained simply, ordinary people can't see spiritual bodies, so someone who can suddenly attack must be a summoner. Moreover, when the man-eating flower appeared, no one else saw it besides them, proving it was a spiritual entity. A spiritual entity can't be far from its master for long, or it will lose power, so its true form must be nearby. He also noticed the girl wore a custom-made high-end outfit, indicating she came from a powerful family. More importantly, the earrings with the black rose emblem were the generational symbol of a great clan that owned the school Ajay attended. Therefore, the true power of this female summoner must be superior. It turned out that Ajay was the target of his school's principal, and the girl was sent to control him. In the eyes of everyone at school, this female summoner was like a goddess due to her charm and coldness. Right after that, she boldly walked into Ajay's classroom, decisively placed a letter with a black rose on his desk, and left. His friends were all envious, thinking he had caught the goddess's eye, but only Ajay was concerned. After school, he was blocked by the brother of the girl who had secretly liked him. The man angrily accused Ajay of not only rejecting his sister's feelings, but now daring to steal the goddess's heart as well. Dora was excited because she thought Ajay had become famous, but he just tried to ignore the gossip and headed towards the forest as instructed in the letter. There, he encountered Mayal sitting on a tree, had a brief conversation, and left. The curious students following Ajay were suddenly blocked by tree branches and couldn't proceed further. Ajay, when reaching the end of the path, witnessed ancient tree trunks parting to reveal a garden of shimmering black roses, where the cold goddess was waiting. As soon as Dora saw her opponent, she became hot-headed and wanted to rush in for a decisive battle. Ajay quickly stopped her, while greeting the girl and saying Dora was just a pet he had recently adopted and needed to protect. This statement angered the goddess, who immediately threw a black rose towards them without saying another word, directly ordering her spirit beast to attack. The power from the plant whip struck both Ajay and Dora, sending them flying. Dora was about to unleash her secret weapon but couldn't pull it out in time, while Ajay bore the frightening silence from the opponent. When the goddess executed her final move, Dora still hadn't reacted in time, forcing Ajay to rush forward desperately. Unexpectedly, a light flashed, cutting off the giant plant's hand. Surprisingly, the secret weapon turned out to be an extremely sharp ancient pig butcher's knife. The goddess remained calm, continuing to attack, but Ajay and Dora quickly found a weakness, counterattacked directly, and defeated the monster. The goddess, witnessing her spirit beast fall, was disappointed but calmly recalled it. At that moment, Dora suddenly became angry, throwing the knife straight at her, determined not to let this grudge go. After Dora rushed forward, intending to swing her knife at the goddess, Ajay stopped her just in time. He understood clearly that if he let her attack, he would be dragged into trouble, essentially turning himself into a criminal. Furthermore, Ajay was aware that the goddess had actually been holding back with them. Otherwise, the consequences would certainly not have been simple. He reminded Dora to look behind her. Hearing this, when she turned around, Dora was so stunned that she seemed to turn to stone. She had to change her expression, retract her aggression, and pretend to be gentle and flattering to avoid causing more trouble. Not only that, in her flustered state, Dora even invited the two of them to Ajay's house to try the pulled noodles she boasted were delicious. However, the goddess's pet showed an annoyed attitude, sarcastically remarking that its master would never be like a meaningless glutton. But ironically, just as those words ended, the goddess's stomach growled clearly, making her embarrassed while others couldn't help but laugh. In the end, Ajay formally invited the group to his home for a meal cooked by himself. Strangely, the two who were fiercely fighting earlier were now sitting at the same table, eating and drinking happily as if they had known each other for a long time. While eating, the man eating flower spoke up, explaining that the recent incident was just unavoidable. This was because the world of summoners was divided into good and evil factions, and whenever they met, they had to determine superiority through a battle. It further explained that summoners were also divided into two types. One side consisted of protective spirits, while the other consisted of dark spirits like itself. Its master, that cold young lady, was actually one of the city's protectors. It even praised Ajay for passing a difficult test. Unfortunately, before it could finish speaking, it was stuffed with a chicken leg by Hana, the cold black rose goddess, who then quickly left. Ajay hurriedly followed her out to the yard. Hana only introduced herself briefly, without beating around the bush, then gave him a black rose, saying that from now on, she would be observing his every move 24 hours a day. This action surprised Dora, who thought Ajay had just received a confession of love. But for Ajay, the gift wasn't an expression of affection, but more like a stamp confirming he was labeled as a demon, a person with power bound by this girl. That night, in her dream, the cat girl fell into a terrifying nightmare that made her wake up in panic. When she opened her eyes, she found herself on the highest rooftop of a building, surrounded by countless cats. She took a few steps and then suddenly jumped down, her posture as strong as a warrior. Meanwhile, in the classroom, Ajay was completely surprised when the familiar space suddenly turned into a chaotic zoo. Dora had just woken up and was terrified to see the frenzied animals pouring in. They not only damaged tables and chairs, but also boldly attacked teachers. On the school grounds, various animals appeared, from ostriches running everywhere to a large panda blocking the emergency exit. On the streets, camels moved in herds as if fleeing from danger, gorillas casually played basketball with students, and eagles attacked MCs during live television broadcasts. The entire city was like an out-of-control mixed zoo. Amidst the chaos, Ajay saw a girl calmly walking among the giant animals. He immediately rushed over, pulled her away from danger, and didn't hesitate to scold her, saying that such reckless behavior was like seeking death. At this point, Mayao also appeared, and Ajay didn't hesitate to grab her, wanting to take her home, but received a slap from the cat that startled him. When he saw the girl sticking out her tongue teasingly, calling him a fool, Ajay could only be bewildered. When Dora arrived, she quickly realized this girl wasn't normal. Meanwhile, on the rooftop, the man eating flower and Hana had identified their target. Hana decided to act swiftly, sealing all the animals in just a moment. Nevertheless, the cat girl escaped and protested vehemently, insisting she didn't want them harmed. When questioned why she dared release animals to cause chaos in the city, she responded with anger, saying humans were the ones who deserved to be caged, while animals should not be imprisoned. A fierce battle broke out. The cat girl attacked with her claws. Hana dodged skillfully but still received a scratch on her face. Despite sealing the opponent's feet and spinning like a top, Hana still couldn't subdue her. The opponent continuously changed forms, now becoming a lightning-fast leopard, now a giant bear, making the battle increasingly intense. Hana was forced to play her trump card, summoning an enhanced man-eating flower for relentless attacks. Standing outside, Ajay and Dora were both trembling with fear and commenting as if watching a high-level match, even betting on who would win. But when the large bear was crushed, its fragments transformed into wolves, rushing to attack, causing even Hana to be injured. Finally, she counterattacked fiercely, neutralizing everything, but her opponent transformed into a giant cobra, continuing to charge. Both sides were exhausted, but neither was willing to stop. Ajay feared that if this situation continued, the outcome would only be tragic. He quickly asked Dora if she had any weapons that could stop them without causing harm. In the dangerous moment, they collaborated to use soul chains, just in time to stop the fight. At this point, Ajay understood that Mayao was the true form of the cat girl. He didn't let her explain much, focusing on bandaging her wounds. In her sparkling eyes flashed the memory of their first meeting, when she was injured and he patiently cared for her. Despite her volatile temperament, that memory made her gently bite his hand, leaving a mark. From then on, a special bond seemed to form between them. Finally, the chaos was also quelled, with Dora announcing that everyone should clean up together. However, the man eating flower insisted on handing over Mayao, considering that the only condition for everything to truly end. Ajay still firmly intended to protect Mayao. hoping to care for her until her wounds healed, leaving other matters for later discussion. The man-eating flower refused to yield, determinedly approaching with the intention of capturing Mayaru, but was immediately stopped by Dora. Dora gently advised that anything could be discussed calmly, as everyone was currently bearing significant injuries, and returning for treatment would be the wiser choice. The man-eating flower showed displeasure, turning to look at Hana, hoping to find agreement. However, Hana maintained her cold, emotionless face, only saying to leave it be. Before departing, she didn't forget to remind Ajay that he was going down the wrong path, having chosen the wrong companions and enemies. With that, Hana turned and left, leaving them behind. That night, the news reported on the chaos caused by escaped animals, announcing that the situation had been brought under control. After hearing this, Ajay wondered whether animals, like humans, could also become summoners. Mayao explained that whether dogs, cats, or the most despised creatures, all could become summoners. She even boasted that she had summoned countless powerful, even rare animals. But in her heart, the most formidable was always her brother. However, whenever she mentioned her brother, her eyes showed a hint of sadness, as if recalling an old memory. Dora quickly realized that Mayao's purpose for appearing here was to find her brother. On her journey following his traces, she had come to this city, but temporarily lost her summoning abilities due to severe injuries. Fortunately, during her wandering, she had been helped by Ajay. Mayao believed her brother was deliberately avoiding her, so she thought that if she caused some trouble, he would be forced to appear. But now she regretted what she had done. Ajay just gently patted her head, reassuring her that sooner or later, she would find her brother. But currently, the most important thing was to recover from her injuries. They were unaware that the entire conversation had been overheard by the blackbirds outside, whose master was a white-haired person with a scar. The next morning, while Dora and Mayao were engrossed in playing games, Ajay was awakened by persistent doorbell ringing. When he opened the door, he was surprised to see a group of people with bizarre, large bodies like bodyguards. Recognizing the badge on their chests, Ajay immediately felt uneasy. They said they had come to invite him to have dinner with the young miss. Initially, Ajay wanted to find a way to refuse, but before he could finish his sentence, they successively drew their weapons to threaten him. With no other choice, he was escorted onto a helicopter. When the aircraft landed, Hana and the man-eating flower were already waiting. As soon as they met, Dora and Mayao started quarreling with the man-eating flower. Hana simply gently invited the group inside. The scene there amazed everyone. Everything was magnificent and spacious, with security systems installed everywhere, and even magical electric fences to protect spiritual energy. Servants were busy trimming artistic garden plants, and the person Ajay mistook for urinating was actually responsible for watering and fertilizing the plants. This strangeness made Ajay and Dora want to sneak out. On their way, they encountered a chef preparing to grill meat, and all the ingredients were spirits of different systems. Dora was puzzled, unclear about how many summoners were in this house. The man-eating flower only replied that there was only one, and that was the person they were about to meet. Upon entering the building, the group encountered a majestic divine statue, which was the image of the legendary guardian leader. Just as Ajay set foot on the stairs, he was surprised to hear a voice calling from that statue. In an instant, the surroundings disappeared, replaced by a desolate area where a blonde woman stood under a tree, continuously calling his name. Ajay reached out, wanting to step forward, but was immediately slapped hard on the head by Dora, pulling him back to reality. The sharp pain made him dizzy, and at that moment, Hana led them to the room where grandfather was waiting. The man-eating flower introduced him as the patriarch of the Black Rose clan. Dora whispered to Ajay that he looked just like an ordinary old man. However, as soon as he waved his hand, the aura he emitted left everyone stunned. Then he began to tell about the origin of all souls. In ancient times, all were born from a crystal, and humans had continuously fought to possess it. From then on, the summoner world was divided into two factions. One side continued natural power, maintaining world balance, called the Guardian. The other side was ready to use any means to monopolize power, called the Destroyers. He believed that Ajay's group meeting him was fate, and sooner or later, Ajay would have to choose between becoming a Guardian or a Destroyer. When he asked, Ajay hadn't yet answered before Dora and Mayao started causing a commotion. Finally, Ajay spoke, saying that everything the old man had just said had nothing to do with him, because since childhood, his mother had instructed him not to get involved with the underworld. and his father always reminded him that the path of killing had no future. The old man just smiled, then revealed that Ajay's parents had abandoned him at the age of 5, leaving him to live depending on others until he became self-reliant. He also knew that Ajay was originally a good student, had to work 2 jobs at once, and even dyed his hair to hide his naturally blonde hair. He further said that in Ajay's heart, there still existed an insecurity, and the image of his parents was hidden carefully in his wallet. Hearing this, Ajay fell silent, while Dora, half believing and half doubting, rummaged through his wallet to see. And indeed, there was a family photo with a blonde boy who was Ajay when he was young. For Mayao, the old man also hit the mark, saying she was looking for her brother, but that person was now a globally wanted criminal, a member of the Destroyers, famous in the world of terrorism and assassination. Hana immediately interrupted, reminding grandfather that perhaps he had revealed too much. Everyone was stunned, their faces changing color. The patriarch then suggested they stay at the castle for a few days to hear more about the past and present of summoners. But Dora objected, reminding that tomorrow Ajay still had to go to school. He just smiled, saying not to forget that he was the principal. Ajay was speechless, only silently lamenting that this was indeed a fearsome old man. When the food was served, Dora couldn't help but drool with desire, making the patriarch laugh, praising the girl as indeed intelligent and mischievous, but unable to guess the attribute of spirit. Being praised, she was delighted, her nose swelling with pride, and she admitted that her life philosophy was just to take care of her appearance. The patriarch was curious, having heard that her complete form was very special and attractive, so he expressed a desire to witness it. Dora was shy but half-jokingly said that because she found him to be a handsome old man, she would show him later. Unexpectedly, he sensed something strange, and indeed, a sneak attack came from afar. Fortunately, he dispelled it in time. The light flashed off, and a masked person appeared, an old adversary whom he called the Destroyer. The battle immediately erupted, with just a few moves causing the castle roof to collapse. Seeing the critical situation, the patriarch ordered Hana to evacuate Ajay's group, while instructing her to protect him at all costs. But before they could escape, they witnessed the entire estate being destroyed, spirits being successively eliminated by a mysterious woman. Hana was forced to engage in battle, but nearly got shot. Even Ajay fell into a dangerous situation. Meanwhile, Mayao recognized that the person had a familiar feeling. It turned out to be the brother she had been desperately searching for. She returned to her true form, approached with many questions, but that familiar brother did not hesitate, immediately attacking his own sister. Witnessing Mayao collapse, Ajay immediately rushed forward to confront that enemy. However, at that moment, a shadow unexpectedly appeared in his mind. After just one sword swing, the entire surrounding scene became strange. Ajay's body seemed to return to when he was just 5 years old. In front of him was the familiar giant ancient tree, and from behind, he heard his mother's dear voice, then felt warm arms embracing him. Before that scene could settle, it immediately transformed, as that woman gradually morphed into an abnormal figure, wanting to kill him. In reality, Dora couldn't hold back her tears out of concern for Ajay's life, while the patriarch was still fighting with all his might against the Destroyer. Hana alone was resisting that frenzied woman, but she was clearly outmatched. Taking advantage of Hana's severe injuries, another person launched a sneak attack from behind. Hearing the scream from the man eating flour, grandfather quickly dealt with that person, and then used healing techniques to save his granddaughter. However, with one hand healing and the other defending, he could hardly block the fierce attacks from the Destroyer. Finally, they took turns pressuring him, causing the patriarch to be shot down. In his dying moments, the image of the granddaughter he loved most suddenly appeared like a shining light, causing his will and power to surge intensely, his eyes emitting light beams like electric fire cutting across the sky. His unique power had been summoned, and the battle became balanced. Nevertheless, that was still not enough, as the patriarch was quickly exploited for his weakness by the Destroyer and defeated. The enemy even extracted the spirit from within him and cruelly crushed it. Faced with this horrific scene, both the man eating flour and Dora could only freeze in shock, helplessly watching the enemy leave. After this catastrophe, Ajay's group was the only one who survived. The news immediately reported that the Black Rose Castle in the suburbs had been leveled overnight. Dora was so angry she wanted to swallow the remote control hole. while the man-eating flower was crying and determined to heal its mistress at all costs. Mayao couldn't hide her disappointment upon realizing that the brother she had been searching for all this time was actually the enemy. Ajay remained silent, knowing that their current strength was completely insufficient to confront them. If they fought again, the chance of survival would be almost zero. Seeing Ajay constantly staring at his phone, Dora became so angry that she flipped the table, thinking he was just playing around, not realizing that Ajay was actually trying to find clues. Online, he discovered a video recording the entire battle from last night. Clearly, someone had used a satellite to record and broadcast it live. From the traces left behind, he also tracked down the account that had posted it. Someone who specialized in posting articles about researching summoners. This person had even written a long series called The Most Adorable Summoner. Though the drawings were clumsy, the content described the daily life of a summoner in extremely detailed and accurate ways, making Ajay suspect that the author was actually a real summoner. Thinking this, he realized that if they could find her, it might be the key to helping them counterattack. After investigation, Ajay learned that she would appear at a book signing event happening that day. The group immediately prepared to depart, leaving the man eating flower to take care of Hana. Although he frequently confronted and was annoyed by her in his heart, Ajay had decided that those who hurt Hana would pay the price. Meanwhile, the rail system urgently announced that trains would not stop at the designated stations as required. Yet that girl still easily opened the door of a speeding train to step out. Not only that, but she could also freely take free Coca-Cola from vending machines and even teleport between floors as she wished. Another strange pleasure of hers was turning all the screens on large buildings into images of herself. Mayao recognized the target, while Dora rashly thought that even a brick could take down that small figure. But Ajay warned that they should absolutely not underestimate her, as the opponent might be stronger than imagined. They had to wait for hours at the book signing, but the author didn't appear. The girl was depressed, blaming herself for not being famous enough, until she suddenly discovered someone reading her comic. Overjoyed, she decided to sell on promotion. Buy one, get 10 free. Ajay didn't hesitate, spending money to buy the entire stack of books to collect. The girl had almost achieved her perfect goal, but quickly recognized Ajay's presence, even knowing his name and guessing the positions of Dora hiding in the trash can and Mayao hiding in the tree. The group's entire meticulously planned operation thus collapsed miserably. Upon meeting, Dora immediately swung her knife to the girl's throat, questioning her about a series of things, including irrelevant questions like her measurements or ID number, finally receiving a heavenly punch from Ajay to her head. The maid introduced herself as Stan, calmly answering all questions, even willing to disclose her home address and ID number. Her special ability, as she claimed, was scrolling through her phone smoothly like the wind. Initially, the group looked down on this strange talent, but after hearing Stan reveal that the destroyers from last night weren't 5 but 7 people, everyone was stunned. Intrigued, Dora immediately grabbed the phone to try it, then was surprised to find countless data from surveillance cameras inside, to the point of exclaiming that whoever owned it was no different from a voyeuristic maniac. Mayao was eagerly sidling closer to see, but even more surprisingly, the phone also had the ability to emit warning beep signals, and could even automatically call the police if the danger level increased. Just as Stan was explaining, it emitted a signal, and immediately after, a violent explosion nearly sent the whole group to heaven. Stan quickly analyzed, informing that the area around them had 60 civilians and 4 suspicious targets being warned about. When she realized the enemy was just a few hundred meters away, she immediately ran for her life, forcing the group to chase after her. Wondering why the opponent was targeting her, Stan just honestly said that even she wasn't clear. It could be Russian arms dealers, American intelligence, or even Cambodian kidnapping scammers. Any possibility existed. Hearing this, Dora could only be speechless at this girl's reckless character. Stan added that the stronger you are, the more enemies you have, and that was the reason. The group was stunned when they saw the real opponents were bizarre creatures they had never encountered before, while Stan calmly instructed that if they just jumped over the fence ahead, they would have a car waiting. Ajay couldn't hide his surprise at the self-driving car technology that Stan controlled just with her phone. Meanwhile, Dora sitting in the back frantically announced that the enemy was closely pursuing them. Based on the software Stan used to scan, plus recognizing the opponent's badge, everyone immediately knew they were the destroyers. Dora was so worried she thought the group would soon meet their maker. But Stan dismissed this, telling her not to get her hopes up, as she was their actual target. It turned out that Stan had infiltrated the destroyer's headquarters server and was discovered. Since then, they had been quietly following her for months. Hearing what Stan said, Ajay began to look at her differently. But Stan herself didn't seem very concerned. She explained that the mechanical spirits were just low-level spirits, managed by a fierce female leader in the destroyer faction. Although they had the ability to operate independently when far from their summoner, Stan had blocked their radio signals, making calling for reinforcements impossible. According to Stan, both their power and intelligence were limited. However, Ajay didn't feel that way at all, as their attacks were extremely dangerous, and they were even smart enough to shoot out the car's tires. Stan found it hard to believe, suspecting that this might be an improved version. In the tense situation, Mayao and Dora were assigned to confront them directly, but both of their attacks were easily dodged. Only with Stan's coordination could the group take down one, but behind it appeared a whole pack of mechanical spirits chasing with terrifying speed. They quickly surrounded the car, continuously firing non-stop. Fortunately, Ajay had created a holy shield in time to protect the group, but the opponent immediately switched to heavy firepower, almost causing him to lose his grip. Stan could now only mutter prayers, hoping they didn't bring explosive weapons. Just as she finished speaking, the enemies showed off their arsenal of heavy weapons. Luckily, the bullets flew off course. The group thought they were the target, but then realized the opponent was aiming to destroy the road ahead. In just an instant, their car plunged straight off the cliff. Dora quickly spread her wings to save them, but due to the excessive weight, her body rapidly shrank, causing everyone to fall to the ground. As soon as they landed, the mechanical spirits had already surrounded them from all four sides. The group was almost desperate, thinking they could only surrender. But thanks to Stan's special ability, she immediately found the nearest vehicle using her phone. It was a giant truck that she controlled to ram into all the mechanical spirits, leaving everyone with their mouths agape in amazement. However, the enemies had not been completely destroyed, forcing Stan to seriously give it her all. The giant vehicle suddenly transformed, becoming an extremely powerful weapon in her hands. In just a few moves, Stan overwhelmed and claimed victory. But then a strong smell of oil rose, making Stan realize her beloved vehicle had fuel leakage and was about to explode. In a split second, she was thrown dozens of meters away, landing with a painful fall. At this point, her wig fell off, revealing her true appearance, making Ajay suddenly remember this was the strange guy he had met during the club activity. Dora immediately grabbed the wig to inspect it. Then together with Mayao, they simultaneously scolded him as a pervert. Stan's face reddened as he explained that disguising one's identity was necessary to be a summoner. Ajay then extended his hand to invite Stan to join the group, hoping he could become the eyes supporting them. Stan, finding it very interesting to go with Ajay's group, agreed. Afterwards, he led the entire group to his mobile base. There, Stan introduced them to a special map, the result of many years of satellite observation, recording all spiritual wave activities on Earth's surface. On the map, green dots represented unawakened summoning spirits, while red dots indicated destroyer activities. When scrolling through the timeline, everyone clearly saw the green dots gradually being swallowed by the red dots, proving that the destroyer faction was continuously seizing summoning power. Stan also pointed out that in recent years, the number of awakened spirits and conflicts had increased dramatically, especially dense at times like the night at Hana's house, when countless spirits were awakened simultaneously. Dora was curious about the significance of the 17th, and Ajay suddenly remembered that was the day he summoned Dora. Stan didn't believe in coincidences, so he immediately questioned Dora's true identity. All eyes simultaneously turned toward her, making Dora flustered and evasive. Seeing this, Stan temporarily let it go and decided to take the group to Hana's mansion to search for more clues. Thanks to detective software, Stan reconstructed the entire scene, thereby discovering the presence of a space system summoner, along with traces of a second battle that took place in the garden. The images revealed a female assassin codenamed Deem, a fire system summoner specializing in guns and explosives with a brutal style. Beside her was Mayao's brother, an animal system assassin codenamed NHA, who commanded a flock of ravens for reconnaissance missions. When Stan asked Ajay about his experience when being taken down, he only remembered being lost in a strange place that was both unfamiliar and familiar, like a nightmare related to his mother. Stan continued to find traces of the fifth person, an assassin with the ability to control minds, who had manipulated Ajay. Despite his cloaking state, Stan was still able to construct a blurry image. The sixth assassin was a female killer codenamed Anne, specializing in the illusion system, cold-blooded and needing just one move to take a life. As for the seventh, the boss of the Destroyer faction, he was the real murderer who killed Hana's grandfather. He possessed the power to absorb both spirits and souls, no different from a true Grim Reaper. Stan concluded that their real objective in the raid was not just killing, but also targeting the secret hidden underground. When the group arrived at the location, they were surprised to discover that the castle's basement contained thousands of sealed spirits, a heritage that Hana's family, in their role as guardians, had secretly stored for many years. Who would have thought that one day all would be seized by the destroyers? Mayao was bitter thinking about her fallen brother, while Stan affirmed that Hana's grandfather was the strongest summoner he had ever encountered. If he hadn't faced 7 opponents simultaneously, perhaps the situation would have been different. During the investigation, the group discovered a broken piece of an enemy's body, attached with special microparticles emitting a scent. Mayao smelled it and immediately recognized it as the fragrance of Lycoris radiata red spider lily, a rare flower in the city that only grew in a stone forest 300 kilometers away. Stan further confirmed that there were traces of spiritual energy there, proving that at least one of the 7 destroyers had set foot there. Although Ajay was wary that this might be a trap, the group finally agreed that it was time to take a risk, accepting an all-in to find answers. To have the strength to fight, the group first needed to fill their hungry stomachs to recharge their energy. This happened to be Ajay's specialty in cooking. Stan couldn't hide his surprise at how delicious the simple noodles Ajay prepared were. The reason was simply that Ajay had been self-reliant since childhood. If he didn't know how to take care of himself, he probably wouldn't have survived until now. While eating, Stan suddenly suggested he wanted to hear more about Ajay's past. Ajay thought he had nothing to tell, because before the age of 5, he only lived with his parents, but the family constantly moved houses, so he had no friends. Then one day his father disappeared without a word, and a few months later his mother left too. Thanks to distant relatives who took him in, he was able to have a normal life until now. After hearing this, Dora gently comforted him, while Mayao was curious to know more about Dora. That girl shyly shared that she had actually existed for 3 million years, but her memories were extremely scarce. Only a few vague fragments remained, like shattered pieces of memory. The more she tried to remember, the more her head ached. Stan had admitted to secretly scanning her body and discovered something very strange in her heart, not due to memory loss but seemingly sealed. This made Ajay even more uncomfortable. As the atmosphere grew tense, Dora joked, comparing herself to a Korean drama heroine with a locked heart. After eating and resting, the group began a new journey. Stan's car could only take them to the edge of the forest. The rest had to be traveled on foot. Before their eyes was a strange stone forest landscape, which surprised everyone except Dora, who felt uneasy. That feeling came from her being called a goddess yet being forced to carry Stan like a princess. According to Stan's satellite map, there was a mysterious entrance here, meaning there might be people living there. There used to be a crowded village, but 10 years ago the entire village disappeared from the map. Since then, rumors spread about mysterious disappearances of passers-by, making Dora tremble with fear as Stan told the story, forcing her to hide behind Ajay. Not long after, his eyes caught a red area ahead. When they ran over, they saw a brilliant sea of red spider lilies, Lycoris radiata, and a small house. Stan checked and only detected weak spirit waves. Just then, Mayao pulled the group down to hide, having heard someone coming out, but it was just a tall man plowing the ground to plant flowers. Using her own eyes to observe, Mayao confirmed he was just an ordinary farmer. Because the phone signal in this place was weak, Stan couldn't investigate yet, while Dora insisted on going out to fight, but was stopped by Ajay. When the man finished his work, he quietly went inside to prepare his solitary breakfast, but the scene suggested peacefulness. Mayao then felt the sultry weather, guessing a storm was coming, and urged everyone to act quickly. Dora was busy lying lazily when she was suddenly frightened by a tiny field mouse, exposing their plan. The man even waved, inviting them in, so Ajay decided to lead Dora in first. The man showed surprise, as it had been many years since any guests had visited. When Ajay mentioned his group, the man looked confused because only he lived there. Dora checked and confirmed he wasn't a summoner, so the earlier exposure was due to the mouse, not her fault. Ajay expressed interest in buying some food supplies. The man happily poured tea to offer and even gave him a pile of goods. This enthusiasm made Dora think they had mistaken the person. The man told about his lonely life here, with few people passing by, so today having guests made him talk a lot. A breeze blew by, making the scenery more beautiful. The sea of spider lilies here was planted by his own hands. Many years ago, the land was only barren. Villagers worked hard to cultivate but only got bitter fruits. There was a girl who naively believed that fresh flowers could bloom on black rocks. But after countless attempts, all failed. When she passed away, the man was determined to continue her wish. Heaven and earth seemed moved. Flowers began to grow gradually from 1-2 blooms, until after 10 years, turning this place into a brilliant sea of flowers. Hearing this, Ajay realized that girl was the man's first love. While Stan was still checking, Mayao detected the storm had arrived, with strong winds approaching. Ajay reminded the man to go inside for shelter. But he stood still with a purple face, muttering about flowers. It turned out the whirlwind was destroying the sea of flowers he had worked hard to cultivate. The anger within him exploded, tearing his shirt in the sky. At the same time, Stan checked the man's body and immediately told everyone to act because he had been possessed. The man was in pain as if begging for help, but couldn't speak, then gradually transformed into a destroyer. He knocked Ajay away, and Mayao charged in but was ineffective because the body layer was too thick. Both Dora's and Ajay's knives and swords shattered, leaving them at a loss. Dora had a stronger weapon but needed to coordinate with Ajay to summon it. Mayao was impatient, attacking intensely, but was caught by the leg and slammed to the ground, severely injured. The destroyer began to advance toward Ajay and Dora. This far away, Stan's equipment was completely useless, but he still bravely stood up to block the way and buy time. Stan confidently called him an Earth System summoner. As soon as he finished speaking, he dodged a ground-breaking punch and teleported behind him. He exploited data, revealing the real name was Majuo, 26 years old, with brain damage and suffering from dissociative identity disorder. Also a cold-blooded international criminal. Those words seemed to provoke him, making him go crazy and blow Stan away. At that moment, the sky poured down a rain of white human bones, hitting Ajay's head and confusing him. Under the sea of flowers, countless human corpses were buried, from old to young, making him understand why the village disappeared. Stan felt the situation worsening, urging Ajay to act quickly, but he stood motionless. Then a sudden power surged in his body, thanks to the transmission from Dora. With that, Ajay rushed in for a fierce counterattack, gradually overwhelming the opponent. After continuous strikes, he finally delivered the finishing blow, breaking through the rock layer covering the man's body. Stan urgently told Ajay to quickly destroy Majuo's core, considering it the end of everything. But contrary to expectations, Uncle Majuo gave a bitter smile, wanting to leave them with a final last testament. He said he truly deserved to die, but absolutely could not die in such a simple way, because if they killed him, everything afterwards would become much worse. Since birth, Majuo had carried a terrible curse. He was possessed by a demon, what he called a parasitic soul. That monster took blood, flesh, and even human brains as nutrients, step by step gnawing and invading his body. When he was born, his mother died from difficult childbirth, and his father also collapsed and committed suicide a few years later. The entire village considered Majuo a disaster, a monster living in the ordinary world. He grew up in rejection, being beaten, locked up, then thrown behind the mountain to be left to fate. Everyone thought he would starve or freeze to death, but with a bizarre will, Majuo survived, eating even soil and rocks to exist. In the darkness of despair, he thought he would never be seen as a human until the day he met a little girl. That girl's name was Ah Hua, carrying a pure, naive, and kind soul. Seeing him miserable, Ah Hua was not afraid but secretly shared her meager portion of rice with him. The image of him eating so ravenously that he choked made the little girl involuntarily laugh. That smile like the first sunlight illuminating Majuo's life. Ah Hua also promised to continue bringing him food, considering it a secret between the two of them. From that day, Majuo's heart for the first time knew what warmth was. So it went. Day after day, Ah Hua always saved half her meal for him. The little girl had a naive dream that on this barren black rocky land, brilliant flowers could grow. Although knowing it was impossible, she still persistently sowed countless seeds, believing that one day this place would turn into a beautiful sea of flowers. Curious and moved by her belief, Majuo awkwardly asked to try a seed. unexpectedly, just a few weeks later, right on his arm that had been covered by a layer of dark gray rock, a white spider lily grew. At that moment, Ahua was so happy she cried, hugging Majuo tightly. That was the first time he felt there was something he truly wanted to protect. The two bonded until they grew up, but fate was too cruel. Life in the village became increasingly difficult. Crops failed and hunger prevailed. The villagers didn't look for ways to overcome, but instead placed all blame on Majuo. They believed he was the root of all disasters, determined to kill him as a sacrifice to heaven. Amid the village's madness, Ahua risked her life to stand in front of him. Despite being beaten, struck with sticks, and even slashed with knives repeatedly, she still held tight to protect him. The final knife plunged into her body, blood from that fragile body staining the white spider lily that had just bloomed. The moment he watched Ahua take her last breath, Majuo's heart exploded. The anger, pain, and hatred of many years of suppression now erupted violently. The parasitic soul inside took the opportunity to escape, merging with the hatred, turning him into a real monster. The chains restraining him were torn apart, and then the entire village sank into a sea of blood. All that remained were tragic screams, wronged souls, and a Majuo holding Ahua's body, crying cruelly. He placed the blood-stained spider lily on her chest as a final farewell. From that day, blood and flesh mixed into the black earth. On the piles of bones gradually grew countless red spider lilies, forming a sea of sorrowful flowers, but Majuo's heart was rotten. He both regretted and blamed himself for being the one who had killed the only girl he wanted to protect. He knew his crime was unforgivable, deserving death 1,000 times, but he also understood that once he disappeared, that parasitic soul would escape and spread greater disaster. The chains on his chest weren't a core, but a temporary confinement, firmly locking the evil spirit in his body. Before he could finish speaking, spirit waves exploded around him, more violent than anything Stan had ever recorded. The Destroyer organization from afar also sensed that shock, immediately summoning all remaining members. They understood that Ajai's group had inadvertently broken the seal, releasing this cursed monster. Recalling the first day they met Majuo, when he was just a man kneeling in the sea of flowers in the rain, crying like a child, they had exploited him, had bound him with chains to control the parasitic soul. Now that chain had been destroyed, Majuo's heart stopped beating. His body became an empty shell without a soul, while the real monster escaped outside. It screamed and attacked Ajai's group frantically. Mayao was the first victim, taking a fatal blow then falling to the ground in her true form. Stan was also knocked away, severely wounded. Ajai disregarded everything and rushed up to counterattack, but its defensive power was too formidable. Even the giant combined blade of him and Dora was shattered completely. Ajai fell, covered in blood. In his unconsciousness, he saw a virtual space where an entity was tightly chained. When he unconsciously touched it, the chains broke, and cold light poured out. In reality, the monster had approached behind Ajai and Dora, its giant fist preparing to strike. Dora, though exhausted, still rushed up to shield Ajai. That image coincidentally matched the memory of Ahua in Majuo's heart, causing his soul deep inside to flash with a final spark of consciousness. The monster paused, tears flowing, but its aggressive instinct still made it swing its fist. In that moment, Ajai in the dream world firmly grasped the chained light. It exploded, spreading everywhere. That light enveloped Dora, causing her body to transform. From the sky, a rain of swords descended, piercing through the monster's body. Dora now seemed awakened, her bright red wings spreading, her hair burning with light like divine fire. Alone, she launched the final blow, slicing through the monster, causing heaven and earth to shake. Sunlight gradually shone down, dispelling the darkness. Ajai woke up in Dora's arms, staring at her as if she were a living deity. Seeing Stan and Mayao still alive, he was relieved and smiled. The final battle had finally ended, but Majuo truly could not survive. He bent down, picked up a handful of black soil, and sprinkled it over the man as a farewell. Right at that moment, the Destroyer organization arrived. Seeing only a cold corpse, they were extremely angry. The leader stepped forward, using his power to read memories from Majuo's soul. After understanding the whole truth, he placed a red spider lily on Majuo's chest, sighing as if in sympathy, considering that from now on, he would no longer suffer. Dora and Stan quickly helped Ajai and Mayao return to treat their injuries. Just when they thought they could relax, Stan's phone suddenly rang with a warning about an extremely strong spiritual wave approaching. The group immediately trembled with fear, as they understood this was not a normal sign. Just seconds later, a woman appeared, teleporting directly to the vehicle. She waved her hand lightly like the wind, but the result instantly split the entire vehicle in half. In his daze, Ajay slightly opened his eyes, immediately sensing the presence of a destroyer. The opponent showed no mercy, not caring that his teammates were seriously injured, coldly killing both Mayao and Stan right before his eyes. The next target was Ajay. They used spatial cuts to tightly bind his body, suspending him in mid-air. Dora's desperate calls rang out, but Ajay was no longer conscious enough to respond. When he opened his eyes again, Ajay realized he was drifting in a strange, mysterious space called a time rift. He wanted to speak, but found himself completely unable to utter a word. A mysterious man appeared, casually saying that Ajay was dead, that all his teammates had been massacred by the destroyers, and their summoned spirits and memories had been drained. Anger mixed with pain caused Ajay to punch through the illusion before him, blaming himself for not being strong enough to protect everyone. The man suddenly revealed he would give him 3 minutes to change everything. When he removed his hood, the face that appeared shocked Ajay as he recognized it was his father who had disappeared when he was young. He only had time to say that after everything ended, he would wait for him at the Demon Forge. Then brilliant light enveloped Ajay's entire body. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself truly back 3 minutes earlier. Despite his wounds, he got up, instructing his teammates to prepare carefully because the destroyers were coming. As expected, that woman appeared again, making the same old movement to slice the vehicle in half. However, this time the vehicle was empty, only hiding a time bomb inside. Ajay's group had already switched to another vehicle. Stan's device reported that the bomb had exploded and taken down one enemy, but also warned that they didn't have much time left. The destroyers would certainly pursue them. Ajay immediately told the group to return to find Hana, but when they returned, they only found a letter left on her pillow. Stan anxiously looked at the phone screen, which clearly showed 2 pieces of information. The bad news was that the destroyers were only 2 kilometers away from them, while the good news was that he had borrowed Hana's airplane. This special aircraft had the ability to hide traces, at least helping them escape temporarily. Once settled on the plane, Ajay opened the letter Hana had left, reading that she would wait for them at the Demon Forge. That name greatly troubled him, as it matched the place his father had just mentioned. Mayao also found it familiar, because previously when searching for her brother, she had heard that he had once set foot there for training. Stan, being like a living encyclopedia, explained that the legendary Demon Forge was the ancient sacred site of the Summoner world, considered the greatest arena of primordial times. Only those who passed the test there could transform from apprentice summoners to true summoners. Not only the destroyers, but even Hana's grandfather had trained there. Stan recalled that deep within the forge lay hidden a source of spiritual power and priceless treasures, but the transmitted documents were so scarce that the exact location was almost forgotten. When Ajay looked carefully at the coordinates in the letter, he realized it was pointing to that very place. Stan checked again and confirmed the distance to it was over 7,000 kilometers, meaning about 7 hours of flight. After discussion, the group agreed to head straight to the Demon Forge to try their luck. The flight lulled them into sleep until Stan woke everyone up. Before their eyes appeared a horrific scene: giant whirlpools in the sea, an area known as the Sea of Death. Over the years, countless planes and ships had disappeared without a trace here. Stan was excited, believing that the legend was indeed true, that these vortices were created by ancient summoners to hide the barrier layer, separating ordinary people from the secret land. After minutes of dizziness and vertigo from passing through the storm, they were surprised to see the landscape change. Before their eyes was a green island, like an earthly paradise. Dora even joked that she wanted to jump into the sea to cool off. But the unease in Ajay's heart did not dissipate. He frowned slightly, and Dora approached to reassure him. But the whole group was startled when they realized the destroyers had managed to follow them all the way here. The woman swung her blade, severing the aircraft, causing the entire group to free fall. In the moment of danger, Stan activated the system, transforming the shattered aircraft wreckage into a giant robot to fight. The group joined forces to counterattack, but the enemy teleported away. Just when they hadn't had time to breathe a sigh of relief, Mayao warned of the appearance of a second destroyer, a heavy weapons specialist, who was frantically firing bullets. The robot was gradually destroyed, while a third one also charged straight at them. Ajay managed to fire the cannon, hitting the target. but the opponent released a series of bizarre black birds to attack. The robot could no longer hold on. He had to order everyone to rush straight toward the Demon Forge, but the destroyers were close behind, and the critical situation seemed to have no escape. At that moment, a new character appeared, a rabbit-eared girl who was also the manager of the Demon Forge. With a seductive appearance but an imposing aura, she casually approached, holding up red cards, coldly announcing that their group had violated 12 prohibitions of the island. This appearance made the destroyers pause. Even when one of them recklessly pointed a gun at her, she just lightly flicked her hand, pushing the weapon away, and coldly asked if they knew this was the Demon Forge. Bonnie used her seductive beauty to strictly warn that group about the immutable rules of the Demon Forge. She emphasized that the first principle was absolutely no killing outside the arena, regardless of what grudges they held. If they wanted to resolve issues, they had to leave the island. If they deliberately violated this, even if they were billionaires, generals, or powerful figures, they would still be forced to obey the rules of this place. Bonnie also recognized that they had all graduated from this forge, so she didn't hesitate to threaten that if they didn't comply, the supervisors would force them to retrain once more. The woman wanted to protest, but was stopped by the leader because at the Demon Forge, even the strong had to respect Bonnie. The result was that they had to retreat silently. When their shadows disappeared, Bonnie changed her attitude, openly showing disdain. Ajay's group breathed a sigh of relief for having escaped a disaster. Stan and Dora excitedly thanked her profusely, eagerly calling Bonnie fairy sister with endless praise. She quickly changed her expression, smiling to welcome them to the forge, while also arranging to meet again at the registration square. Ajay had many questions to ask, but Bonnie had already glided away on the sand like a breeze, leaving them in awe. The group could only trudge along the hot sand like a desert, still not reaching their destination. Suddenly, a voice called from behind. It was a man riding a giant lizard, introducing himself as Richard, a traveling merchant, who offered to give them a ride. Seeing they were all covered in injuries, Richard showed concern, while Dora quickly recounted that the group had nearly been hunted to death. The man just smiled, saying their presence here wasn't strange because this island was essentially a haven for countless criminals and death row inmates. Those words made Richard misunderstand, thinking they were fugitives, but Dora hurriedly clarified. Richard laughed loudly, reassuring that at the Demon Forge, the only thing that existed was rules, not good or evil distinctions. To clarify, he recounted the ancient legend, when the prolonged war between the Guardians and the Destroyers had burned the world. After those tragic years, both sides were forced to sign a ceasefire agreement. The Summoners joined forces to create an island separate from the world. Since then, all conflicts were channeled into the arena to be resolved fairly according to rules, while killing was strictly prohibited outside the arena. Richard compared the Demon Forge to the Olympics of the Summoner world. The story helped Ajay's group understand why the Destroyers earlier hadn't killed them. Stan was curious about the consequences of violations, and Richard affirmed that anyone who broke the rules would become a common enemy of the entire summoning world. No matter how strong they were, they couldn't resist. As they talked, they arrived at the island's residential area. Dora looked around with interest as Richard guided them. To the left was the airport and port, ahead was the Forge town, and through the main town was the entrance to the Demon Forge. They were greeted by a tall man at the most famous tavern in this place, notable for its secret drink that the tavern owner and Richard collaborated to sell to newcomers. Ajay's group didn't suspect anything, gulping it down and praising its delicious, refreshing taste, and were surprised to learn the drink also had healing properties. They excitedly ordered more, not realizing this was an addictive liquid. When it came time to pay, they were horrified by the extortionate price, but Richard pretended to be kind and lent them money. Afterward, he continued guiding them around the Forge town, a bustling place with all kinds of shops and full of summoners. Stan excitedly took souvenir photos, and the group stopped at a clothing store. Seeing their tattered clothes, Ajay agreed to try shopping. But when they entered, they were overwhelmed by the luxury. Stan was fascinated with a Lolita dress, Mayao admired cat clothes, and Dora paid attention to lingerie. Ajay just stood watching, feeling bewildered by the scene of the girls being so enchanted. He only needed a white shirt to make himself stand out. In the end, everyone chose something new for themselves, but then realized they had been tricked again when the prices were inflated thanks to a conspiracy between Richard and the shop owner. Nevertheless, the group remained cheerful, thinking they had met a kind benefactor. By evening, they were at the registration hall of the Demon Forge. The scene was magnificent, crowded with all sorts of people, and on the high platform was Bonnie, the benefactor who had saved them. The lively atmosphere like a concert made Ajay's group cheer along. Bonnie introduced that everyone could choose one of 4 gates to register, but to enter, each person had to pay an enormous fee of 2 million. That number struck the group like lightning. At that moment, Stan calmly paid first, making Dora wonder where he got so much money, while Stan just chuckled, saying he had just hacked the accounts of several Mexican smuggling bosses. After saying this, he left his teammates behind to go inside, leaving the rest of the group stunned. At this point, a muscular guy spoke up, mocking them for being poor and telling them to stand aside. Ajay decided to lead the group to gate number 2, where the criterion was selecting beautiful people. Dora easily passed because of her hot figure, even linking arms with Ajay, calling him her master, making him flustered. Mayao also tried but was harshly criticized for her appearance, so she moved to gate number 3 to test physical strength. In an angry mood, she threw a powerful punch and was surprisingly accepted. Inside, she was still upset, so Ajay had to comfort her. They were surprised to see Richard also present. When asked which gate he chose, Richard frankly chose gate number 4 for fame, where celebrities, politicians, and even heads of state gathered. It turned out he was famous in the underground world, among the top globally wanted criminals. Richard said that if a summoner couldn't pass through one of these 4 gates, they wouldn't be qualified to enter the test. Just as he finished speaking, Bonnie appeared again, announcing a new journey. She explained that they were currently in the Forge Arena, which had 100 floors. Every 10 floors would have a checkpoint, and if they failed, they could only return from that point. Although the first floors weren't too difficult, they were enough to make many candidates give up. Richard had challenged for 5 years, holding the highest record at the 9th floor. Hearing this, the group couldn't hide their amazement. Dora enthusiastically said she wanted to conquer all the way to the 100th floor, making everyone laugh out loud. Before long, they were taken to the 1st floor, which was a luxury hotel exclusively for candidates to rest for free. As soon as she smelled food, Mayao quickly ran in that direction. The first elimination match would officially begin tomorrow, but many former candidates knew well that the real competition had already started from this very moment. According to former contestants, the judge on this floor was a world-class trap master who enjoyed torturing and tormenting unfortunate candidates. It was said that he once poisoned the food, causing hundreds of people to suffer from diarrhea simultaneously, forcing them to abandon the competition. Even more terrifying, he had once released countless leeches with monster bloodlines into the bathtub, causing chaos throughout the night. However, Ajay's group was still having fun in the pool, completely unaware. Seeing Ajay sitting quietly in a corner, the group wondered why he wouldn't change into swimwear. Actually, Ajay was only 16 years old and wasn't used to bathing with others, especially with a spirit cat and a cross-dresser present, making him shy and keeping his distance. This distance made them feel looked down upon, so they all teased and ganged up on Ajay. Just then, Bonnie's image unexpectedly appeared on the Forge's television screen. She claimed to be the one who would introduce them to this arena, emphasizing that the current strongest warrior was Hana along with her companion, the man-eating flower Luke Hone. According to Bonnie, Hana had advanced straight to the 11th floor, demonstrating outstanding abilities, becoming a new star, and was even regarded by many as a goddess. When Ajay's group heard this news, they confirmed that Hana was indeed at the Forge, and her progress had far exceeded what it was before, so the group also understood that they must take the fighting seriously. After bathing thoroughly, they each returned to their rooms to rest. But the veteran contestants still whispered that the most exciting part had just begun. Indeed, that night, while Dora and Ajay were sound asleep, strange sounds suddenly rang out in the room. All the walls slowly closed in, with both doors and windows sealed shut. Dora eagerly pulled out her pig butcher knife to break through, but after a few slashes, the door remained undamaged while the blade shattered. They gradually realized this was a sophisticated trap. Dora tried various methods as time passed quickly, then suddenly remembered her summoning ability, reminding herself that she could call upon any equipment, and so she summoned a master key to open the door. This allowed them to escape outside and discover that all rooms were under attack. When they reached Mayao's room, both were horrified to see a giant green cockroach crawling out. Thinking it was dangerous, Mayao reassured them, explaining it was just a special form she used to easily escape. Gradually, many others also escaped, from Thai witches to a child with superhero powers. However, Stan was still nowhere to be seen. Looking at the last room, they shuddered to see blood spreading outside. Mayao choked up, saying in her heart that although Stan only had an M4 and was an otaku with a strange personality, she truly hoped she hadn't met with misfortune. Fortunately, right after that, Stan suddenly rushed down from the ceiling, declaring that he had escaped through the ventilation system with his endurance running ability. At that moment, an announcement came through the speakers. It was the first floor judge, announcing that the competition had officially begun. Although contestants were puzzled, thinking the test schedule was for tomorrow, when the clock struck midnight, they understood that the game rules had been activated. This mission was to survive and leave the hotel. As soon as he finished speaking, a series of explosions rang out, with traps continuously activating. The entire hotel transformed into a volcanic abyss. The floor collapsed, and Ajay's group was swept down. Dora had to return to her true form to help Ajay pull everyone to safety. All these actions were observed by the judge through the screen. He sneered, believing that even if they saved the weak, they would still fall elsewhere. Meanwhile, many other contestants either tried to fight or had already panicked and cried, hoping to leave the game. After countless challenges, Ajay's group approached a door with the words "exit" alongside warnings that it might be a trap. Reading it over and over without being able to distinguish what was real, the group fell into despair. However, Ajay decided there was no turning back and recklessly attacked the door. Finally, it opened and led them to the end point of the first floor. The clown-nosed judge reported that only 30 people survived, 49 were injured, and 13 had died. Those who had just escaped surrounded him angrily, wanting to take action, but they paid a heavy price, terrifying the remaining ones. He coldly reminded them that although the Forge's rules allowed killing judges, they must know their own limitations. Afterward, he snapped his fingers, and countless treasure chests fell down for each person. Inside were random spoils. Some were lucky enough to get gold and silver, while others were unfortunate to receive only a single old boot without a pair. Stan hesitated, muttering to himself that he would open an orange-colored divine weapon he liked. He recited charms to the point of worrying Dora, but when opened, he only received a pile of heavy mines. The judge announced that the first prize winner was Stan because his reward was a timed bomb that would open the way to the next floor. Thanks to this, all contestants moved to the second floor. Upon landing, everyone thought they had fallen into hell, then were suddenly frightened by Bonnie. Afterward, she reassured them, explaining that the psychotic judge and the traps from the previous floor were gone. This floor would be a fair competition, and she was in charge. This examination was a speed test. Each contestant had to run 20 laps, and the first 15 to cross the finish line would win. The match was also broadcast live on television. Ajay felt excited because his father and Hana might see him. Everyone began warming up. Mayao was confident in her speed, and Dora was enthusiastic, believing her large wings would surpass all. Ajay worried about Stan because there were no cars or planes here, but Stan still firmly declared that he had a way to win first place. While the new contestants were excited, the veterans had prepared secret weapons beforehand. After 5 minutes of warm-up, Bonnie announced the official start of the competition. When the gun sounded, everyone ran with all their might. Meanwhile, on the Destroyer organization's side, they were trying to resurrect the monster inside Majuo once more, as they still held a grudge, wanting to make Ajay suffer. The leading contestant was Mayao, who ran with such speed that viewers thought she was a moving altar. Beside her was a flying ninja squirrel from the north, greeting a fellow tribe summoner while running. Right behind them was the couple Ajay and Dora. The Mick didn't hesitate to call them an 11th grade boy and his girlfriend hugging very romantically, making both blush with embarrassment. Ajay felt the Mick was too nosy, while Dora was shy but also found it interesting, as what she said was accurate. Following them was the Grand Wizard of System 3, riding a witch's broom as if straight out of a fairy tale. Behind him was the mysterious Poison Master Angelo, along with many other contestants closely following. Notably, there was also a father-son pair participating together, and the special appearance of the famous comic artist hero, who had temporarily set aside his work to compete. Despite hiding his identity, he was eventually discovered by the MC, causing enthusiastic fans to chase after him for autographs. He had to use his speed snow drawing skill to shake them off. This led some old contestants to accuse him of cheating, But Bonnie not only didn't prohibit it, but showed interest, even teasing that a useless old man who couldn't even afford planting money should go practice more and come back next year. Right after that, a figure zoomed by so quickly that even the Mick was stunned, wondering what had just flown past. It turned out to be Stan, riding a rocket, who in the blink of an eye had passed most contestants, even leaving Mayao far behind. She was very annoyed, curious about where Stan got the rocket from. In reality, due to a military exercise taking place, Stan had conveniently borrowed one, thinking they probably wouldn't notice. During the race, he warned everyone to be careful because something big was about to happen. Indeed, many contestants left behind suddenly realized a simple truth: they didn't need to run fast themselves. They just needed to slow others down to win. So they began playing dirty, using weapons to take down opponents, even ready to betray friends. When Ajay and Dora ran by, they were shot 6 times. Dora tried to dodge but couldn't escape, forcing Ajay to think of a desperate measure. He flew back, using his power to counterattack and return the bullets to the shooter. Bonnie, watching through the screen, was extremely excited as the race became increasingly intense. Meanwhile, the Poison Master Angelo released a poisonous smoke on the track. Anyone running through it had difficulty breathing, convulsed, and some even lost control and plunged straight off the cliff. Mayao was furious, thinking he was too despicable, so she immediately charged forward, transforming into a poisonous snake to cut through the smoke. Angelo remained confident that she couldn't succeed. But at that moment, Mayao's new friend appeared, ambushing from behind and controlling the wind to create a whirlwind, blowing away both the smoke and him. Bonnie noticed that storms kept coming. Before she could breathe a sigh of relief after the air hazard, chaos erupted on the other side of the track, making her want to call the police to intervene. One man, seeing the tense situation, rushed to help but nearly lost his life. Fortunately, the artist hero used his pen to block the fatal blow. With the belief that friendship and effort were always more important than winning or losing, he continuously preached, drawing words like a lesson right on the battlefield. Drawing paper and ink boxes all became educational weapons. His character made Stan greatly admire him, even asking for an autograph while running, ignoring Ajay and Dora urging him to continue the race. At that moment, Bonnie announced the good news that the number of contestants still standing on the track was now under 15, meaning anyone who crossed the finish line would be a winner. 2 contestants who had just luckily escaped death thanks to unexpected situations had their fate decided. The competition now became a fierce race to find the champion. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the destroyers were discussing. They wondered why their boss didn't allow attacking the forge, when each of them had enough power to fight 100 opponents. This girl was explaining that the last time, when stopped by Bonnie, she had tried to infiltrate alone but failed. The arena doors were closed. She tried various methods like spatial displacement, wall drilling, digging holes, but all were in vain, and she was even nearly killed by security chasing her. Finally, she could only wander around the town, conveniently buying some treasures, including a special old television. The 2 senior sisters weren't very interested in this entertainment, but when the blonde sister tried it, they were surprised to see the live broadcast of the competition hosted by Bonnie. On the screen, Mayao excellently won first place on the 2nd floor. Ajay came in second with a difference of only 0.55 seconds, and Hiro stood third. The next scene showed the 3rd floor examination with cooking contest rules. Ajay used his specialty, pulled noodles with beef, to conquer all the picky judges. Mayao, though never having cooked before, used her claw skills to prepare a unique forest fruit dish that smelled delicious. Stan again demonstrated his technological expertise, inventing a robot that made fresh ice cream cones, delighting everyone. Watching the cooking, Flame outside was swallowing hard. After that competition, to help the contestants relax, the 4th floor was designed with a singing examination. But the result was surprising. A beautiful contestant sang so terribly that everyone was terrified, even making a baby cry. That cry helped the baby win the title of loudest champion on the 4th floor. Seeing this, the hot-tempered sister angrily shot the TV to pieces, lamenting that the Demon Forge looked no different from a kindergarten. Just then, their boss returned and heard the whole story. He realized his teammates were still obsessed with Ajay and the Demon Forge. They showed anger that the enemy was having fun while they couldn't do anything. After a discussion, the group remembered that the 3 of them had never entered the forge. The summoner in the group spoke up, saying that life seemed to be missing a piece, so he proposed that the boss allow them to participate for a week to experience it with Ajay. The boss surprisingly agreed, even preparing a new friend to go along, instructing that if they met Ajay, they should say it was a surprise gift. Meanwhile, at the Demon Forge, Bonnie was meeting with the elders to report the situation. She informed that this year's Group 7 season initially had 92 registered contestants. After the first floor at the hotel, 62 people were eliminated. The second floor speed test eliminated another 15 people, and no one was eliminated on the third floor. Thus, by the fifth floor, only 15 contestants remained. The elders assessed the progress as not bad and advised Bonnie to continue according to plan. Moreover, the high-energy wave source she had collected was also large enough. An elder praised her for doing very well and said it was time to initiate the sacrifice ritual. They had prepared a teleportation gate leading directly to the 100th basement floor of the Demon Forge. There, Bonnie saw the goddess Pandora, the origin of all souls. She placed the sacrifice in, infusing spiritual power with the hope of awakening the goddess. In their view, if they could accomplish this, all efforts would be worthwhile.